Welcome to Dolby Creator Talks. This is a show about how artists use technology to tell their stories, and I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Today, we're talking about packaging, which is a word that gets thrown around a lot here in Hollywood. You can think of it like the process of bundling everything a project needs to get made. The script, the actors, director, sometimes even the financiers, so that it's ready to pitch. But how exactly does that process work? Here to demystify yet another complex Hollywood concept is our good friend and Dolby Fellowship winner, Carlos López Estrada, here with another of his outstanding satellite sessions. We're so excited to bring this conversation to you thanks to our ongoing collaboration with Antigravity Academy and CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. Once again, Carlos brings together a diverse A-list panel of guests from around the world of film and television, including directors, producers, agents, managers, and financiers, to help us all better understand how a project gets packaged. Take it away, Carlos.
So, okay, we're going to talk about the panel today and what we're here to discuss. It's called Packaging Your First Film, but I think the same philosophies will apply to TV and beyond. So once we have a brilliant idea, or once we have a script that is finished and ready to go, normally, not always, but normally the next big challenge is packaging the project. And this is a process that is part strategy, part art, part a little bit of a mystery that a lot of us don't fully understand yet. So it's this process that brings together all the right pieces, whether it's cast, whether it's financing, whether it's other partners, other talent, in order to turn a concept into real film. And today, we're very lucky to hear from a handful of key players from very different areas that all have extensive or a very interesting outlook on packaging. And they're going to share a little bit about the challenges, their understanding, and their experience in putting projects together and making things come to life so that we can all enjoy. So please help me welcoming our illustrious panel. We're going to start with Dave Green, who is a director, most recently helmed Coyote versus Acme, starring Will Forte and John Cena, a courtroom thriller featuring the Looney Tunes. His past work includes directing the amazing Earth to Echo and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows for producer Michael Bay. He is also developing an anthology of shorts, Toothpicks, into a series for TBS in partnership with Absolutely Productions and Supper Club. Also an old friend. So hello, Dave. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to learn about how packaging works.
Me too.
No idea. Yeah.
Next, we have Alex Coco. He is an incredible producer, recently coming off from Sean Baker's Palme d'Or winning ANORA, set to be released anytime soon, very soon, in weeks. Hopefully I'll be watching it. It's released through Neon. Previous work includes producing multiple Cannes premieres such as Red Rocket in 2021, The Sweet East last year, and Pet Shop Days, which debuted at the Venice Film Festival. He also produced Champ, The Power Signal, both Sundance Film Festival selections. Alex, thank you for making room for us, and good to be on the move with you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I am in the airport on the way to the New York Film Festival in LA, so I will do my best, but I have time before my flight, so I'll be here the whole time.
Thank you. That's a filmmaker mid filmmaking.
Exactly.
Next, we have Quintos Cathcart, who is an independent film financier dedicated to increasing access for underrepresented filmmakers. In 2023, that was last year, she co-founded Unapologetic Projects with Tyler Bame, and her credits include The Inspection by Elegance Bratton. Is that how you pronounce Bratton? Is correct? Yes, I know that. Bitch Ass by Bill Postley, and Dìdi co-produced with us. Thank you, Chris, for allowing us to make movies.
Thanks. I'm much like Dave. I'm excited to learn how packaging works.
Katie Lehner is next. She's a TV literary agent at CAA. based in the LA office. She represents a wide range of leading writers, producers, and directors, along with prominent media organizations like The Atlantic and BuzzFeed Studios. Katie, hello. Thank you for coming.
Hi, guys.
And last but certainly not least is Phil Sun. He is the president, managing partner, and co-founder of M88, a full-service management firm representing a diverse generation of artists to create cultural shifts. Previously, he was a partner at WME, and today he represents top talent such as Michael B. Jordan, Taraji P. Henson, Gemma Chan, and Carlos López Estrada. Amazing. He was one of the first Asian American agents promoted to partner at WME and is known for using his platform to push for change, and we all appreciate it. Phil, thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's gonna be fun.
Much appreciated. Alex is gonna be popping in and out. I think he's at the airport, but we'll trust he'll find his reception and all of us. So okay, to start it off, and whoever wants to start, we'll just go down the line. Can you just help us understand in as simple terms as possible what exactly packaging is? And I know that's a broad question, and I know there's many ways to understand it, but at least your own understanding of this concept that sometimes feels a little mysterious. If anyone wants to go first, please go ahead.
I can dive in.
Yeah, do it.
In the most basic of in the most basic of terms, it's adding on elements to make a project undeniable, right? So adding on cast, filmmaker, incredible executive producers, like to make a project really, really undeniable and kind of the most sellable form of itself. And in TV specifically, this dates back to the FinCEN rules, and when independent studios, it was kind of harder for independent studios to put projects together. You know, from an agency perspective, we would try to load elements onto a great piece of material, kind of imitating what the independent studios used to do, and then take that project out to market in order to have the most leveraged bidding war, right? So that kind of harkens back to the original term of what it used to be. And obviously it has evolved, it's ever changing, but I think in the most basic sense, it's adding elements to make a project undeniable.
That was a very comprehensive start. Thanks, Katie. Phil, is it cool if I pass it over to you, since you also have been on that side of packaging for...
Yeah. I mean, I think Katie is absolutely right. I think in this day and age, the only thing that's probably evolved is as the marketplace gets more challenging with buyers and financiers, it's also to leverage a bit of control for the talent that we're putting it together for. You know, one variable, even a strong variable in a project, is more susceptible of just being bought by a studio and, you know, going through the traditional path of development, etc. The more significant pieces that make it undeniable, as Katie was saying, in this day and age, we play towards ownership, right? More control for the creatives. Making it undeniable makes it, you know, in a challenged marketplace, more desirable. And from a leverage standpoint of negotiation, gives us on the rep side a lot more leverage for our clients to get what we want deal term wise. So I don't think studios love that, but it is what it is.
I'm learning a lot too. On the other side, from the filmmaking side, Chris, Alex, Dave, would you like to add any color in terms of your understanding of what packaging is? And I have a lot of questions about packaging, so if you if your understanding of the term is a lot of questions, that's okay too. But if any of you want to chime in, please feel free.
I'm going to pass it on. I feel like those are really good definitions, and those are really good definitions. But I will have questions also.
Yeah, for me, it's just trying to get the film made, you know, just trying to put together, just doing whatever we can. It's so hard to make these movies. So any combination of things that we can do to make the film just happen, you know, it's just something we're all so willing, you know, just to package and to make it something where a company would want to actually invest and give us the money to see the film and get it made.
Thank you. And Chris, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but you started your company and you're supporting projects, financing and producing. So whether you knew a lot about it or not, I think the active act of packaging movies is relatively new to you. Is there anything that has been like illuminating or confusing or complicated about this idea?
I mean, yeah, so many questions. But from my perspective, this is something that I'm investing in where like I just want to like this is one of many things that I'm investing in. So I just want to be able to like make sure that it's cool. Like like I can't like I don't want to like get in there. I can't get in there. I got a lot of other ones that I got to also be checking on at the same time. And I just want this to be like the best team it could be. So like the best director, the material, the script is the strongest, the like, like just kind of all of it, like the strongest iteration of the script, really all of it to me, it like makes some kind of magic thing that we call a package, question mark.
I think having questions about it is just as important as having answers. And yeah, thank you. I think your perspective on this is going to be super important. So okay, let me ask you a question, because as we decided that we wanted to dedicate this conversation to this idea of packaging, it was very evident immediately that people had very strong opinions about the concept, about the process of packaging a movie, about what it means for the industry. Some people, as Katie and Phil were mentioning, is like it's just a tool and it's a measure to make sure a project has the best chance to succeed. Other people, I think, are a lot more cynical about it and think it's this like very deeply unfair and very flawed process, very superficial, because it forces you to think about the business and the numbers, arguably even more than sometimes the creative. So just whoever wants to chime in on it, like where do you land on that scale? And if you are kind of like in the middle, or you feel like there's really important aspects of it and why it exists, but also some like pretty complicated, sad ones. Like just what's your relationship with the process and the concept of having to package a movie in order to get it made? That was the longest question ever.
I'm happy to chime in on that. I think it depends on your audience as far as what packaging is a good or a bad thing. And I think most of the audience here is like developing filmmakers, etc. So I wouldn't read the press and kind of go off of like how they've vilified the word of packaging. I think historically packaging has, of course, tied to economics, specifically. And Katie, I used to live there, so it's not a knock on agencies, but like specifically to agencies and like why they're doing it. There's a whole different session that we can do about why packaging, even though economically beneficial for your representatives, was also economically beneficial for those that got their shows and films made. So I guess there's a middle of the argument on that. But for developing and emerging filmmakers, I think packaging in this day and age is a necessity. With all due respect to like everyone on the Zoom, it's just a challenge marketplace. I think financiers, as much as they would love to, just invest in films that matter and voices and stories that they haven't heard, like it's a business, right? So like I think, again, to the packaging being a bad term, it's just because, to your point, Carlos, it comes with the conversation of the business, which a lot of creatives just don't like. And that's fine. That's why they're wonderful creatives, but there is a business to all of this. People don't put money in just to put money in, they put money in to make money back. As much as they tell you they just love your film, they don't do it because they just want to lose money, right? So a packaging scenario helps them in their risk assessment. It also helps with, names that can be packaged help the creative process, right? Like you want a star in your emerging film, you want a big producer, you want name value, if nothing else for their experience, and protection as you're learning as a young filmmaker or a young talent. Like there's not many chances that you get to swing in this industry. It's just a tough industry to break into. So packaging, if seen in that light, is more of a beneficial tool to get to you behind the camera, getting to make the story that you want to make. And then the business side is just a reality that, specifically Katie and I take a lot of flack for, but it's also to protect the client.
Yeah. Some truth there, Phil. Anyone else would like to chime a little bit about your
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Phil said it great, but I think nowadays there was the pre-WGA packaging, right, which meant a real financial link to what packaging was. Now in a post-WGA ATA, non-packaging world, we use it almost interchangeably, right? It's just the art of adding on great elements to give the project the best shot, right? Obviously, there's a historical link that means the financial part, which again, we can spend a whole other time. But I also think it always goes back to context and the material, right? If a piece of material, doesn't need a lot of large elements, it's a quieter film, you can go off and shoot it. Or something like Tires, right? He completely self-funded Tires. And went off and shot that, got his friends together. Like, you just have to go back to the creative always. And I think that, if there is an amazing role that we know an amazing star will want to read that lends itself, I think it's always going back to the material, and finding the best way to get it done.
Dave, I'll pass it over to you because I know that you from the beginning just said that you have as many questions as you have answers, or who knows, maybe more.
Yeah.
But in your experience, you come from making low budget music videos, low budget shorts, and then you've gone into really see films of all sizes. Like, how do you understand this term and what is your relationship to it?
You're really trying to get me to talk, aren't you? Yeah, I mean, it's honestly different for me because like I so far have only made movies like kind of inside of the studio ecosystem, and it's just a little different. Like sometimes they know they're making a movie and there's already basically a cast in place and there's already financing in place because it is a studio project. But at the same time, they've already kind of maybe prepackaged their own movie and they've said it's this producer and this cast and this franchise or this IP. And then that gives they've hyped themselves up enough internally to know that they have something that they want to make. And then I've also been on projects that they're not sure about. And it's an idea. And then you kind of have to go in as a salesperson and say, I think it should be this. And then it's up to you and the producer and the studio together to kind of build out that team and find your cast and find your writer and make it something, that everyone can go pitch upstairs to their bosses, and make it something that is undeniable, like you guys were saying earlier. So it's kind of the same, kind of different. But I am also really interested to hear from Katie and Phil about the difference between packaging for movies and TV. To me, in my very little experience with TV, it feels a lot more like I don't know, it feels a lot more necessary to have value add names at the get-go than it has, at least in my feature experience. But I don't want to take us off course, but that is one of my questions.
No, this is perfect to dialogue.
I can jump in now, Carlos.
Please.
Okay. So that's a great question. And obviously TV is a challenge marketplace right now with the massive contraction happening, right? We went from 250 scripted series up to 500 scripted series in peak TV. And now we're scaling back down to 250 series. So there is just going to be less TV being made than there was in peak TV for a number of factors that we can talk about. It would take a whole other hour. So that being said, packaging, and again, I'm using it in the term of not the financial sense, but truly adding of elements sense, packaging is becoming so much more important, right? It is, we have this great pitch or written pilot by a TV creator. Who do we give it to that's in an important deal at a vertically integrated company? So think of the Disney umbrella. Who are the tentpole deals that they have invested money in a world where overall deals and first looks are, flowing away, who are the best deals within the Disney ecosystem that we can give that spec or pitch to that is going to force them to look and take it seriously. That's one way, right? Going to overalls within vertically integrated ecosystems. Universal's another ecosystem. What are tentpole deals within that system, like Fuzzy Door, like Seth MacFarlane? Ted was a big hit for them. What else can we feed through that pipeline? So it's that, but then it's also, okay, we have a great pilot. What's a great star? What's a great director? What's a great executive producer? Even better if they're vertically integrated. Some executive producers have so much clout and aren't in a deal anywhere, like the David E. Kellys of the world that can set up projects everywhere. But especially in TV right now, in a contracting marketplace, it is, I wouldn't say it's the end all be all, but it does feel like the end all be all. There are maybe one or two buyers that would actually prefer, they say they prefer until great package walks in the door with high-end talent, writers, producers, but they say they prefer things a little cleaner maybe, right? So not a ton of actresses or EPs above the line costs because they trust their own development ability so much. And they want to keep costs, reasonable. Budgets are going down for shows. So that is one outlier, but no, more so than ever with less getting made, you kind of have to feed it through the 800-pound gorillas that have historically made a lot of TV and that the buyers trust to bring things in on a budget.
I'm learning a lot still. Alex, can I pass it over to you? Because I feel like you have made an amazing career out of supporting filmmakers who work independently, who, I don't know, maybe this is just the way I imagine it, but I think pay less attention to sort of like the name value and the sort of like numbers of it all. And that's maybe just my illusion and I'm just being naive. But what is your, like, based on your experience in the films that you worked on and the types of filmmakers that you surround yourself with, do you feel like there's as much as a concern to make projects sellable, to make projects commercial, to bring like name talent, or maybe not?
Yeah, I've been lucky on a lot of the films that I've made where we've sort of been given the keys by our financiers to really kind of run with it. I know when we're making these movies, we're really trying to just get all these people in our orbit. A lot of us have maybe worked in the industry and have connections, have worked with people. Sean Price Williams is an example. When we made his movie, just had such a great collection of people that we, not just, from the cast standpoint, obviously other, from the crew standpoint, from very much from the cast. So we're just trying to find cool people that we see a future. We're trying to find the next great person. I mean, we had Jacob Elordi when he was just shooting Euphoria season 2. We had Iowa DeBeery. We cast her off of some stand-up tapes that we watched. The Bear didn't exist yet. Like, we're trying to find these people that we think have something, and we try to convince our partners that they do and that they can trust us because we've done it before. I mean, in case of Sean Baker, a Neon, somebody over at Neon jokes, that Sean's like a kingmaker, so we get a lot of like, he just always has these great breakout people, discoveries that nobody necessarily even knew about. Some of them are acting for the first time. So we do have, which in Sean's case, we do have a lot of trust just right from the get because they know he's going to bring interesting people to the table. Mikey Madison is, having such a wonderful moment, and I hope it continues for her. And actually, I'm packaging one movie in particular that Mikey is attached to. And before Cannes, I was trying to convince some packaging people that she was going to be this big star. They hadn't seen the movie yet. Only I had seen it, my producing partner and Sean. But we were trying to convince them, and then of course after Cannes, they were like, okay, yeah, great. Yeah, this is an amazing cast. So for us, we're keeping our budgets low. So, our risks, I see Phil's nodding his head, this is what we're trying to do. We're not trying to make these movies that, we don't have to, there's not as much of a guarantee, that needs to be in place where an actor can really carry a film. We can take a little bit more risk. We can, cast a challenging actor. We can cast somebody that no one's ever heard of, which I really love to create from that place. So, I just hope that we can scale it up a little bit. In Sean's case, it feels like we've been able to a little bit. With younger filmmakers, it's more difficult. So I would just say, just get whatever money you can and get the coolest people that you can have sign on, and and take a chance, and take a chance on your instinct for talent and content and script and a filmmaker, and just get it made, whether it's $5,000 or $100,000 or 2 million, whatever it is, for younger filmmakers in particular, which I imagine a lot of them are on this call and wondering about that. So
I think to chime in there, I think Alex is spot on. I think it's just in the learning process, right? It's variables, right? So it's budget, what he's talking about. Like the lower the budget, the less packaging you need to do, right? And then it becomes more based on concept and vision. But the newer you are, even with that, if you can do it responsibly, you can take more risk, right? You don't have to package as much. But to the point of Sean Baker, he can still cast unknowns, but Sean's the brand, right? So like that's where people start, they forget where he started and what
that's
those,
right.
like now they're like, well, Sean's still casting unknowns. I'm like, but Sean's Sean. So like that's what people are giving money towards, and that's what
correct.
hammering towards, because he is a kingmaker, right? So like if they get to work with Sean, and you don't get many opportunities as a young actor to like get into a film like that with meaty roles with a director like that, like it's all part of a circle. It just depends on where you want to play in it.
Sean is the package, someone says in the chat.
Yeah, I'll tell him somebody said that. It's pretty funny. But that is true. We have conversations with financiers where the budget that they're willing to greenlight at is based off of him. We don't even necessarily need cast to have that conversation. But again, it's not like we're trying, the budgets are still relatively low, so that is still, that there's still, we've been existing at that level. So we have that freedom, so we can sort of just get the film approved and greenlit, and then we can go figure out the movie from there. But in case of the younger filmmakers, yeah, it's hard, and with this contraction, consolidation, everything that's happening, people keep touching on it. I really hope that the money is still there to give filmmakers a chance to really, take a swing, because that's the kind of films that I'm mostly attracted to. But and I hope other people are as well. Yeah.
And I think Sean's story is particularly relevant because, as Phil was mentioning, he's like, he really did start making the most affordable movies possible, and was shooting on phones and was shooting with people who weren't professionally actors, and now he's at a place where he can kind of have a lot more freedom, but he did have to start doing things very, very DIY, and making those really good is what allowed him to get to the point he's at. So lots to learn from Sean. Question for y'all, whoever wants to go first, and not necessarily specifically about packaging, but as we're talking about making projects happen and like willing a movie or a television show into existence, do you have any like one major lesson that you've learned in the last 4 or 5 years, something that you're like, I this is an element that I feel like all these filmmakers and creators who've been able to make something out of nothing have in common? I don't know. It's a pretty broad question, but if you get inspired, please chime in.
Yeah, I think be flexible is probably one big lesson. Like maybe you have a vision for who you'd want to play this. Maybe it's yourself or whatever. But I think like there needs to be another, like you need to be able to reinvent it, whatever that means. Or take a try at reinventing it, that like sort of like kill your darlings feeling. But like, yeah, just because it doesn't work like the first time doesn't mean it's over. Just means like, I don't know, maybe try a different, beef up one of the other roles, or I don't know. It's just there's a lot that people can say no to, and it's really hard.
I think flexibility and patience is definitely something that we forget when we're trying to get our projects made, and sometimes we're forced to remember that we need to have those, but you're totally right.
Just by any means necessary is something that we always try to, keep in mind, however much money we can get, let's make it for that. And I know a lot of filmmakers who get stuck with a budget that's high, they get a line producer, and they're like, oh, let's put this together. And they're like, I got an $8 million movie. Would you like to make it? We're trying to cast it. And I'm just like, this is going to be really hard. Is there a $2 million movie, in here? Is there a $1 million? Or like, what's the way to make this movie with the people that we have access to, that you have access to, that you can actually reach? I try to steer people away from getting stuck, in just waiting for somebody to pass the script to some star, and then all of a sudden it happens. That's kind of a miracle in many respects. I'm sure it's happened, so don't say never, but I just use what you got. Whatever, if somebody's willing to give you a little money, just do that. Just getting started, I think, is like one of the biggest parts of this. And Sean, going back to him, just as that example, some people are mentioning Prince of Broadway, some of his early films, those were like $5,000 movies. It's just that was a neorealist style, so you could get away with a little bit of not having stars, because that would make sense in those films. But maybe that's just something to be interested in as well. Try to explore some of those films, those old Cassavetes movies and neorealist movies, and think movies where you actually, Dogma 95, where you actually, you might have those resources at your disposal, and you can make something really great and really interesting that might have a chance of breaking through.
Incredible. Dave, did you?
Yeah.
Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I love those answers, and I totally agree. That's a good zoom out, Alex, to remember to think about, which is like, oh, can my budget of X amount can this story be told in a smaller number? I think that's really smart, and totally agree with what you said, Chris. I mean, rejection is like so part of what we do. It happens like, it is normal. It just happens like multiple times a week at least, if not a day. Like it's just and if you're getting rejected a lot, it just means you're pitching and you're trying, and it's just part of the process. Like there's no such thing as a filmmaker who gets everything they want or every piece of cast that they want, or that just isn't a thing at any level, I don't think. I don't know. I would say I don't I don't know if there's any truth to this, but I would like personally, I feel like as filmmakers, and I don't know if you feel the same way, Carlos, but like we always kind of have to be marketeers in a weird way. Like we are taking our wares around and we're taking our project and I wouldn't say constantly, but yeah, going to sell, and that means either having a pitch presentation or a trailer or visuals, and really trying to in the best possible way, I don't know, say what the marketing is going to be 3 years down the road, and say this is what this movie is in a nugget, and then go advertise that as best as you can. That's like what I'm doing with a pitch I'm taking around now. It's like, it's just an idea. There's no script, but it's like it's a little video that I made, and then it's like 10 minutes of a rough idea of a story with images, and I'm just like shopping that around and taking it to producers, and it's like I have no idea if it's going to work, but that's, I don't know.
It's gonna work. It's gonna work.
Thanks.
That is at least in film, no matter if it's independent or studio now, there are certain traditional tropes that have now been forgotten as far as when to do things, right? There's like, it's always been the idea, the pitch, and then you get to the cast and the directors and whatnot, and then, excuse me, you worry about marketing later. Marketing is what sells the product, right? So, and one of the pieces of control that a director should think about is not just the product itself, but how the world is going to view this before they even see it, which is the marketing, right? So in a lot of our directors, like whether it's Ryan Coogler or Michael B. or, Issa Lopez, etc., Bliss Bazawule, we take the marketing and have that conversation first now, right? It's like, because it gives you like on set, you're like, if I'm going to market it this way, like there are certain things I want to pick up while we're on production, because I don't want to go to my financiers and ask for, more to get these things that we need for the marketing, right? It's almost like you have to front load the result that's in your mind, knowing it'll change a bit, but again, it's to the control factor, right? Like if a director has a vision for the film or television show, and they know how to reach their audience of which they're trying to sell to, it's a very it's a better sell to at least the studios than it is ever before, right? And I would consider music in that too. I'm sure in your sizzle, it's got like a cool soundtrack, or like, it's got, you got to make them feel what it's going to be, not just what it is, but like what is the feeling this is going to give, right? And that's ever more important before than after now, because to a degree, if you let them control the marketing, the studio will turn into something that you might not want to stand behind, right? We've seen that so many times. So I think that that's just a new norm. I think it's a very powerful norm for filmmakers. Is like it really just gives you another level of like, this is how I want this to be, and then you'll therefore find the right partner, right? They're like, yes, we get that, and yes, we're going to put money behind that. So it is kind of becoming the standard, at least in film. I feel it like in television too, Katie. But please speak.
Yeah. No, it's so funny you bring up marketing because I just, Phil, got to sit with someone who is a very, very high level exec that looks after film and TV. And this exec originally came from film. She may sit at the head of a place called Comcast, who knows? But it's that person. And she literally said, when we're thinking about marketing, and granted, she really comes from a film background, but is the concept marketable? Is an element of the cast marketable? Or is the demographic highly marketable? So it's really, she distilled it in those three buckets, and it's now, to your point, Phil, more relevant than ever.
Yeah, I think I saw a comment in the chat that is blowing up. It's like really whoa. But know your audience. Like know your audience. Like you're like in the films that you make long term, you yourself as a filmmaker are becoming a brand about what stories you tell, right? So whether it's Sean, whether it's Coogler, whether it's Mike, or whether it's Nolan, right? At some point you'll get to a place where like, why Nolan gets to make everything he wants to make? Because Nolan's the brand and they know how to market Nolan. It doesn't even matter what he makes anymore. He's just like, we know how to market that.
And
right? So
Nolan knows how to market Nolan.
Nolan knows
Especially,
he's
yeah.
the best at it. He's the best at it, right? So it is such an important aspect of TV and film in the processes now. And because I do believe that financiers watch trends in how studios do it, like even though they don't want to replicate it, they do watch like how things come together to measure their investments. The more you can see your entire vision from the start to the finish, the more they're likely to believe in putting money in.
I see a lot of praise in the chat for all of your answers. So thanks for getting real. It's much appreciated. Speaking about getting real, I'll ask an emotional question. But the concept of packaging often involves thinking of people in terms of value. So it's like, is this actor famous enough? Is this director worth that budget? Is this script worth that budget? So just for anyone who wants to chime in, curious to hear how you handle the emotions that you talked a little bit about rejection, you talked a little bit about this already, but how you handle the emotions that come with a process that, even though it's necessary, often can be really dehumanizing. So whether it's for yourself, whether it's for talent or your clients that you work with, how do you handle with all of a sudden saying, like, hearing, no, that person is not worth this project, or no, that person is not there yet? Chris, I'm gonna start with, you go, Phil, you go.
No, I mean, Katie, I think we could take it from the rep side, like client representation. I think people are pretty used to it now, to be frank, right? And again, it's if you can explain it when it's based in logic, which everything is based in somewhat of logic and numbers, right? Oftentimes it becomes a motivator, right? And probably what's best for the content itself, right? So, and I don't mean that for everything to come back to numbers, but it again is a business. We're creatives, but it's a business, right? So it's, just say someone has a passion project and they want to make it for $8 million, which is like $8 to $12 million, which is a treacherous territory to be in because it's not low budget, but it's not streamer budget, right? And then you go into the conversations like, well, you don't have enough value to get this going, right?
Yeah.
You always have to detach a little bit about this is how the business works, right? When they say value, they're talking numbers, right? And they're talking international territories, ability to sell these, to these foreign sales agents, etc. It's not a matter of you, and one day you will be there, right? If we can get this going responsibly and we can knock this out of the park, then you will be there, right? So it's again trying to take as much our job is to try to take as much emotion out of it, realizing that you should go through the emotions, but also with the, I think you had asked like what you really need in the process, and we were talking about, the, actors, etc. You actually just need advocates that are going to stand beside you, right? And really drive you through these hard times of like, we're going to do by any means necessary, I think, as Alex said, right? But we understand the business and let's be smart about it, right? If we can't get it done for 8 because of your value, let's do it for 4, right? Or if we need to get to 8, let's be smart. You're thinking you can't get 8, but the sum of all parts can, right? So like, let's be strategic about who we can add on to make this get to 8, right? Like, you're lucky if you get an A tier, right? And you're off to the races. But in our world, 2 Bs will equal an A, right? An A and a C, right? Like whatever it is, and it is a little bit dehumanizing because it is a business and business is dehumanizing, but there's a logical path to getting it done that I think just needs to be explained from your advocates and your friend, like your partners, right? Because what creatives don't want to lose is that creative emotion and power, right? That's what makes you great, right? The reason you have, quite frankly, reps is to help do the things that you should not be focused on, right? How to get it done needs to be explained, educated, etc. And if it's a challenge, I think people shut down when they're like, we can't get it done for this, and they're like, well, I'm not bending, and that's when projects die, right? Because that's not by any means necessary. That's I want what I want, and that's all I can do. And like, for the directors on the screen, you can always cut a little bit. Like, there's always a little bit that you can move around when you're talking at a budget of a certain degree. But yeah, they're like, I think it's a hard process and a hard thing to hear,
Yeah.
but there's logic behind it that I think you need friends around, right?
That's one of my one of my, like, as Phil was saying, one of my jobs is like to know our buyers so well and know what moves the dial for them. And that is different. An Apple is different than a Peacock, is different than an FX, right? And because just to give you the logic that Phil was kind of talking about, is these are executives that are in a job and they are risk averse because they want to keep their job, right? That's the thinking that goes behind, especially on the TV side. And again, everyone's list of valuable talent or filmmaker is different for each buyer for so many factors, right? For somewhere like Peacock, they might value this specific creator because they just acquired the NBA rights and they know that feeds a certain audience and they want to capitalize on that. So that's just kind of the logic and thinking that goes in, that as representatives need to be explained and you need to be educated on for why people value certain creators.
This is so helpful. Chris, if you don't mind, I'll put you on the spot again, just because I know that, you and I have just gone through a couple of emotional moments, just wrestling with this idea of value versus humanity. And I think everything that Katie and Phil said, honestly, is so helpful to hear, because we do need to remember often that this is, as much as it is an art form, it's also a business. But I don't know if there's anything that you think is important to chime in terms of you having this realization that it's like, oh wow, now this person all of a sudden is a number on a list.
Yeah, that was hard. That was hard. I say that as like, meaning like, oh, selling my first film at Sundance was hard, like, just like, okay, relax. But like, I think, it's like ultimately everyone has to sell something. So it's like whether or not like I have to sell the movie to make everyone's selling something. But the problem is the like mix of art and commerce in our industry is so it's so like, mixed in there. Like it's hard to extract one from the other. I think it helps me to think of it as like just like their projects, and it's like one of many projects you hope, right? Like I think that really helps. Like just like this is the how I'm going to do it for this one. I'm going to do it this way, and but we're all here for like to speak of like working the business part of it. Like we're all here for like the long haul. Like we're trying to make a bunch of stuff, all of us, and like so you just kind of got to think of it more like a flow than like this be all end all project, because like you have because all we want to is like people who've done their reps and that we can like rely on. Like there I don't really think there's like there is gatekeeping for sure, but like like you're here, you're dedicated, like it's kind of a war of attrition a little bit. So you just kind of have to like do your reps, like make the stuff. Yeah, don't let this one scare you.
I'll ask you each a question if that's okay, just to learn a little bit more about your relationship to bringing projects to life and your particular experience. And Alex, I'll start with you. You kind of answered this a little bit just in terms of the filmmakers that you've been lucky enough to surround yourself with and the types of films that you've been working on. I guess if you were to, start your own studio tomorrow and all of a sudden had chance to greenlight and finance movies and TV projects, like what learning lessons would you take from your incredible, like hyper independent approach to filmmaking into a bigger, more structured commercial approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the market on like smaller films is really shaky in some ways. People are they're trying to put money in, be a part of something bigger instead of, doing fully financing something that's smaller. There's a thinking there in this industry. Maybe people agree, maybe they don't. But that's sort of what I've run into of recent in trying to package these smaller films. But I don't know. I'm always trying to surround myself with filmmakers and who like have a like stick to their guns as well. Like in case of Sean, if we tried to make ANORA and they said, oh, well, you can't do it with that budget, you have to cast Emma Stone, then Sean would say, okay, well, then what will you give me for Mikey Madison? And then they'd be like, okay, it's this much less. And he'd say, okay, well, that's what I'll do it for. Like there's people who I really try to find people who really have like, an idea of what they're trying to make and aren't necessarily going to compromise just to just to get that bigger budget or whatever. I know that's hard because sometimes you kind of have to do that, but there's so many films that you see where maybe actors are a little bit miscast, or maybe they've done that role 1,000 times, and it's partly because they had to package that person to get them, get the movie made. And there's a lot of different factors to all this, and I don't want to criticize anybody, because we're all just trying to make our movies here. But somebody in the chat mentioned like higher budget means higher production value, which I actually don't agree. We made Red Rocket for $1 million, and when you take when I keep saying like smaller budget, everyone thinks, oh, now I'm making this tiny little nothing movie. It's like, no, like we made Red Rocket for $1 million with 12 people, like shooting in real places, like just like scrappy as could be, and we got a lot of production value on the screen, and we hired great people. Drew Daniels is a killer as a cinematographer. We had an incredible art team. Like everybody pitched in. Like everybody was, with producers wearing tons of hats. Like, it's just when I say that, I really just mean like try to find new ways to make movies where you can make them cheaper. But you still are making like commercial, high production value, entertaining movies, so if I were to create a company, I would definitely just be trying to look for people like that, people who can really take a little bit and do a lot, because in the case of ANORA, like that, my production or my mindset in the production didn't necessarily change from Red Rocket to ANORA. We had a little bit more money, but we were still sort of doing the similar process. And the whole idea was just to be like, all right, if we made Red Rocket look like this, we want to make ANORA look, also look like it's that much times, make it appear like we had more, more money. So the idea is just to find filmmakers who are talented and really can just squeeze the juice out of everything and come up with ideas and tactics to just put all the money on the screen possible, and also get everybody paid and feel comfortable, at the same time. Sometimes we give up a lot of things. We give up a lot of comforts on set, like nice crafty and trailers and different things, but it's because we want to put it on the screen because we don't have the money, and that's why we're there. You know what I mean? And as long as you have a crew who's also on board with that, and you have a cast, that's the other big thing, is just if a cast member says, well, I really need, this comfort that we can't provide, then we say, well, maybe this movie isn't for you, because we're going to be going in some places that you will be very uncomfortable, and potentially, shooting on the street or shooting in homes that aren't necessarily locked down, we're shooting in real environments. But that's part of what we're trying to capture when we make these movies. We're not trying to bring in extras. We're trying to shoot amongst the people. And that's what gives that great texture, in those films. So you kind of just use what you got, like if that's what you got, then use it. You know what I mean? I guess. I hope I answered your question, but
you did. And
I do think crafty is very important. Spending on crafty is probably
well, listen, actually, you're totally right. That's really actually is very important. But on Red Rocket, it was one of my producing partners. Like, she was like running to Target or getting Target deliveries of snacks. I don't know. We couldn't hire somebody to do that job. But yes, if you can, definitely try to make put that in the budget early.
That was amazing, and I hope you get to run your own studio very soon.
Thank you, Carlos.
We'll be calling you nonstop if you do.
Dave, I'll pass it over to you, because as we were talking about a second earlier, we came up doing $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 projects, and now you've multiplied that times a lot and have made some of the bigger movies that have been made recently. Just like, now that you've really gotten to see that spectrum, what is the type of filmmaking that excites you the most, or how do you feel like your philosophy as a creator has been informed, inspired by, damaged by?
Yeah.
All
of it. I don't know how that ended up happening, by the way. Like, I think I don't know. I grew up, like, I'm sure all of you guys, just like with a video camera, making ridiculous things with my friends, and that was the most fun, and I think even though I've done projects that have crazy budgets, that can sometimes be the antithesis to fun, or it can be the antithesis to experimentation and playfulness. Obviously, like, having a nice lean budget can really, I think, keep you under the radar with a studio or a buyer, and you can kind of get away with a lot more in certain ways. It's tricky. I mean, I grew up loving commercial movies, obviously, and seeing what they could pull off with budgets. And I think part of the dream when I was younger was like, oh, I want to play with those toys and do sight gags, and I don't know. And kind of, now that I've done all that, honestly, like, making a movie with a little bit less supervision and a little bit more playfulness, amongst kind of cast and crew it would definitely be the goal. I would love to do something like that. I can say, from my last experience, which was a very, very, very positive experience, making something with a healthy budget, like, it is possible, and I have seen that happen. And we did have a very healthy shoot and a really collaborative, fun experience with a ton of great teammates. But anyway, I don't know if that answers your question either, but
It does. It doesn't. I'm excited to hear what exactly you're up to. I'm sure
right on.
we need to have a coffee soon.
I know.
Katie, can I pass it over to you? And you've touched on it a little bit, and Phil has touched on it a little bit, but can you tell us about the role that agents play in shepherding this process of packaging projects? And in your experience, if there has been anything that has been particularly fulfilling, challenging about being sort of like a steward of bringing, like, merging those two worlds of the creative, the artistic, and the business.
And I can only speak from my perspective, but just it's cool to be able to work in a building like this where I'm a part of bigger teams that are larger than myself with senior agents or, you know, incredible creators. And I personally get to, you know, I get to trade in on that sometimes, right? Like I get to, if I have a writer who wrote a great spec or, you know, has been staffing on the TV side and wrote a great feature, and I get to call one of my colleagues in the feature department and it's a kick-ass piece of writing. There's an amazing role for a woman in her 40s, and cut to a very A-list star is now meeting with my TV writer. And like that's the magic of how I can use this building to help with our clients, right? And really, you know, again, someone who's been working in one space wrote something kick ass and we can go and use and talk about it. You know, our job is like talking about how incredible material is our clients are, and then getting our colleagues to listen and then go talk to their clients about it. And then, you know, when it all works out, it's amazing and it's thrilling and it's like exciting. Of course, you hear a ton of rejection always, right? Especially in this fear driven, contracting marketplace. People are always finding a reason to say no. Like that just is the case. But I think with exceptional writing, and I always go back to that, I'm a TV person. Writing is like my probably my main medium. I love filmmakers also, but writing and what's on the page, that's the part where I find the most fun personally packaging from, because it's undeniable in a way. Whether it actually gets made or not is a whole other scenario. And I think one thing for creators to keep in mind is, of course, we want everything to get made, and that's the intention with which we try to build projects with. How does this get made? Yeah, that person might be a cool name, but do they have a track record in the space? Do they have leverage at that home buyer, et cetera? Do they know how to actually make something, right? Have they had experience? Would buyers or financiers actually trust them? To me, I'm like, I'm not just packaging to collect cool projects to sit there and look cool. Like it's the intention to get made. Whether something actually does get made or not is a whole other factor that is a lot of the times out of your control, and just can like talk about the personal, like it can just kill you, right? You work so hard. But I think something in this industry, I have to remember, I remind my creators, it's it's kind of embracing process, right? Embracing process, obviously creatively, right? But also embracing process of how things come together. It's long-term relationship building. This is such a small industry when you really get in there, and it's all repeat business, right? So maybe it's not the project with this A-list talent this time. Maybe it couldn't quite go the distance. Maybe we didn't get a green light. But guess what? She's starring in something down the line. She got the rights to this book, and you're the first writer she's thinking about. So you kind of want to always, yeah, you might experience some failures. You'll experience a lot, but it's always the long-term relationship aspect and doing right by your partners.
That was very inspired. Thank you, Katie. Phil, I'll pass it over to you. You created M88 not that long ago, and it's now this entity known for unapologetically and very successfully uplifting diverse voices in Hollywood. Just curious, like I know it's a big question, but what has been sort of like your strategy in making sure that your clients are still leading the way, even when a lot of people still struggle to give underrepresented talent opportunities they deserve?
I think the people that are giving less opportunity, as you're noting in the question, is like the traditional system, and I just don't live with them. I've learned from them. I think we've all learned from kind of like how the industry is built and like the ins and outs of it and like what works for them, what doesn't. But they've never, across the board, whether it's production companies, studios, agencies, management firms, like all of us, like I never really understood why, what is called DEI and, underrepresented voices initiatives were initiatives when we've seen time and time again when the global majority comes together and telling their own stories, it always works, right? So I think it's I just don't really like our place doesn't really listen to the industry norms. Like we kind of zig when people zag, but we've studied the industry enough to know how it works, right? It's not a system you need to like. I always get weirded out when people are like break the system. I'm like, you don't really want to break something that's been built for 100 plus years. You just want to evolve it, right? And our philosophy has always been, as long as we believe in our talent and our talent, want to create beautiful stories, important stories, etc., we'll find the money, right? You just have to be, it's our job to be savvy partners and again, educating and be like, this is what this traditional space looks like. This is what your vision is. We'll find the money. It doesn't have to be at Warner Brothers or, Paramount or wherever, right? There's so much outside money now. And remember, Hollywood is Hollywood. Filmmaking and television making, like storytelling is sexy. It's still the medium that everyone wants to go to like get away from their normal lives or to go for inspiration and seeing themselves on screen. And like Carlos, we've talked about like Dìdi meant so much to me just because I'm like, oh, that was my teenage self. That's so awesome, right? But our clients will be disappointed and saddened if we just go to what everyone else knows, right?
Yeah.
Like let's really just get to the core of what you want and what you believe in and what you're trying to say. And by the way, this goes for allies as well, because like for us, it's just like-minded people, right? It's like, how do you get those stories on the screen? I don't know that, I appreciate and I love
Oh,
to
that was
think
beautiful.
we would lead, right? Like I just view it as we have some of the most important storytellers in the world, and there's so many more to come that are untapped, right? We have to be nimble enough to understand that the old system is not the gatekeeper anymore, right? We just have to be studied and research like who wants to give us what we need, right? You go like you can see like before brands were just endorsements, right? And I know the directors on the Zoom again, like branded content, like it's an untapped resource, right? I've seen so many chat, things in the chat about like, there's 12 billion, viewers in Latin America. Yes, right? So let's go there. Let's find monies that are trying to get done what we are trying to get done in the States. The States are very small compared to the world, right? But storytelling is universal, right? So where we've found success for our clients is our ability to go outside the system because we never felt even coming up like that we were part of the system. Before it felt like they might be using us. And now our mentality is like, let's use them, right? And like, let's tap into like-minded people in tech, in finance, in, entrepreneurial avenues that are like-minded to us. They're not necessarily in film and television, but they have a lot of cash, right? And you can dangle the Hollywood of it all because everyone wants to be in Hollywood. And then, as the artists on the Zoom know, like, if I can get you in the room with those people, you guys are going to sell it, right? That's the beauty of artistry. It's like artists are special. I do not claim to be one, right? I love representing you guys, but it's like, it's just about building new bridges. And then using the traditional system for what they're for. Like, yeah, great distribution arms. I don't need your help with marketing. I don't need your help with much, to be frank. I just need you to distribute this globally because it deserves to be seen that way. But as far as the ins and outs, like I'll go find money somewhere else. We have the artists, right? They're like-minded people everywhere. I think that's how we lead is because we're not afraid to be like, we don't need you, we need you, right? And then we'll have friends elsewhere that help us get this done.
Amazing, and hope you can continue to do the work you've been doing for
Well,
the rest,
keep
for the
making
rest of the time.
Carlos, you're doing a good job so far.
Lots of heart emojis floating up. And Chris, before we go over to our audience Q&A, I would love to hear a little bit about, we just went through this exact process in Dìdi, and you, I think, were really instrumental in making the movie a reality. And we got a lot of no's. we got a lot of like, wait, what do you mean your protagonist is a 13-year-old? And wait, what do you mean half of the movie is subtitled? And wait, this is a first-time filmmaker. And you started this company in order to say, like, we are not going to care about that. We're going to care about other stuff. So if there's anything that you would want to share about your philosophy and how you've stepped into this financing role and very intentionally have said, this is the way that things have been done, but I'm just gonna be punk rock and do it myself. Yeah, what has that been like? Where'd it come from? Where is it going? Like, how are you feeling?
It's been wild. Yeah, I think Dìdi was just such a special project, but I don't know that it's like it's not going to be the only one. There's like, it's just that that it just hit me at the right time, I guess. I kind of talk about, I think there are more financiers who are like trending towards what we're doing. And that's nice. Dìdi is like a little bit of a case study, I think, that people are watching closely to see what happens, myself included. And yeah, it's just been a great and wild ride. I think for first-time filmmakers out there, knowing that like I'm looking for you too. Like I'm looking for this, like I said before, I'm looking to work. So I want to make a ton of stuff. And like, I think it's hard to pitch your project to someone to get them to like be on your team. But I think those people also are looking for things to make. Like I think we're looking for you guys. So, just keep creating. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Okay, we thank you all. We're gonna move into our 10, 12 minutes of speed round. I'm gonna try to get through as many Q&A questions as possible, and I'll encourage you 5 to try to keep your answers as short as possible so that we can get through as many of these as we humanly can. So here we go. And you can still drop questions in if you want. The first one, will this be recorded? Yes, it's being recorded and we're going to post it in a few weeks. This is for sure not an easy, quick question to answer, but if anyone wants to try, can you all speak to why you're all saying it's such a bad time in the industry right now?
The traditional pieces are making fewer things, right? So I think that's just hard, right? It's a volume thing. But again, I guess it's your mindset, right? It's like, it's hard based on where it was as far as productivity and what output looks like and what studios are buying. It's not hard when it's never been easy. It's just kind of the norm. I do think that and sorry to take time, I'm trying to kind of pass it around, but like, maybe we shouldn't just be making 250 really good television shows. Maybe we don't need 500 like stories that we've seen 900 times, right? Like, I think it's a really good opportunity for really talented people like the people on the Zoom to get stories across that people actually want to see in a quality way versus overloading with a bunch of maybe things that shouldn't be made. So again, perspective is like, yeah, volume wise down, hopefully quality wise up. And I just have found that a lot of the filmmakers, especially from different POVs, oftentimes have the special sauce to get that done.
What's the feeling around short film proof of concepts? Worthwhile or not?
I'm sorry, I'm just going to say maybe not, but that's just my 2 cents. I feel like sometimes it's a less is more approach, like give them enough to hook them and sell them on like, oh, that's the sell or that's what this idea is. But sometimes if you don't have the budget to produce your short at the level that you feel like your movie can be, sometimes there's a dissonance between like, well, is that what the actors are, that's not your cast, is it? Or is that how it's going to be shot? And sometimes you don't want that dissonance. So I would advise against. That's just me.
Anyone else want to chime in? No. Great.
Well, I'll just real quick. I'll just say,
no, please.
If you're gonna do a short, then like make it self-contained, because I've seen people who are just like a scene from the movie, and then you can show it for a pitch, but then you can't really program it into a festival because then nobody knows what's happening unless they've read the script. So make it a full story, like the way they did Whiplash, you know, like that was a good
Totally.
example of they took a script, they took a scene, they made it make sense into a short, and then they were able to get it out there and have it exist instead of just in a pitch package. So just real quick, just want to mention that.
Totally
Amazing.
agree.
If you don't have access to talent or producers or financing, what do you think is a way to create a undeniable package? Katie, I saw you. This is
Yeah,
like
I'm just
Big
thinking of one of
Jeopardy.
my
You unmuted
yeah.
first.
I'm just thinking of one of my creators who shot a phone or on his iPhone in Mexico, a film, and that got into festivals. Like I think again, back to the Sean Baker, of it all. It's like shooting with what you have, and like you guys, how much of us are watching things on our phones, right? Like that's the first stop almost. In my opinion, like don't let those factors kind of be the limitation.
Beautiful. This question says Sean is an institution. Thank you. I agree. Chris, I'll direct this one. I'll direct this one to you. How
Carlos, I'll get Sean on the next call, so we can.
Yes.
Sean as an institution will be the theme of the.
I love that. Chris, how does one find financiers?
Okay, I'm found often through, let's see, producers, reps, obviously. But I'm also like out there. I'm looking at, I'm at the Fringe Festival, I'm watching everything. I'm trying to, trying to be
Film
out there.
festival is a good one, yeah.
Film festival, yeah, for sure. Get your short in a film festival, do the circuit, meet a ton of people. Yeah.
Sneak into the parties.
Yes, for sure. Sneak into the parties.
What is the budget for Dìdi? We're not allowed to say, but it was low. We did it for as little as we possibly could. Really, we shot in Sean's childhood home. His grandma stars in it, so very much like a Sean and Alex approach to filmmaking of just like how can we make it for as little as possible so we can have as much freedom as we can.
We did have really good crafty though.
For
Wait,
Phil and
follow-up question. Sorry, follow-up question. How'd you
Yes.
pay yourselves? Like, do you get paid after the movie sells? Is that how it works?
No, we got a little bit after the movie sold. Definitely not as much as anyone thinks. It's an indie movie and it was very little, and we put like 2 years of work on it. So if you divide it by the hours that we spent on it, we probably got paid like half a cent an hour. But we loved it. But we got paid as we started production producing fee. Cool. Wait, I had a good question and I lost it. Wait, I lost it. Okay.
This is my favorite part right now, just watching Carlos go
Watching me fumble through these questions. Once your film is packaged, once you got to that sweet spot and it's like, I have the package, what is the correct way to present your film to potential partners, either to production companies or financiers? I don't know, Phil, Katie, if you want to chime in on this. I know there's no one way to do it, but what do you recommend as like, okay, I have the thing and I somehow convince the actor. Now what?
Do you want to start with TV, or I'm happy to take film? I mean, you gotta go to like-minded executives if you're going to go to the studio system. Like, again, you want to be strategic. Even though you have a package, you still need a champion inside of whatever buyer that you're going into, and or a financier, right? You want financiers that still are going to reflect the vision and the what you're trying to say in your film, regardless of the package itself. That just gets you more money, right? And gets you in the door. So I think if you're going to go to the studio system or streamer system, you go with, a like-minded executive, and they're like maybe one or two at each place, but that will really understand what you're trying to say and the story that you're trying to tell. And they're just given the ammunition with the package to go to the higher ups. If you have the right, allies and representatives, like you just go straight to the top, as quickly as possible. But again, everyone's situation is different.
Follow up for you, Phil. If you don't have access to the executives, what do you think is like a workaround? Or
I think it's you gotta kind of analyze your package, right? So like if you have a package, I mean, like, or an actor that you're excited by that is packageable and or meaningful, they likely have reps that matter, right? Or, you know, this is where relationships and networking and like doing Zooms like this, like you have to be ready to hustle. Again, I think Alex is by any means necessary, right? You got to do your research and be be not afraid to fail. And just start just like a resume, just throw it out there, right? But be strategic in where you want to go, right? Again, you want to go to places that you can see your project living, or with financiers that you love their resume and like what they have to say. But you just have to be persistent. But again, if you have a packageable piece, like a meaningful piece, likely another advantage of having that is like likely they have a setup
Hell,
team
yeah.
that can just plug into what you're talking about for relationships.
Katie, anything you want to add on the TV side?
Phil said it exactly right. Like you gotta find the execs you think would vibe with the material and package and make sure they're empowered to go straight to the top.
Incredible. Dave, Alex, how can you avoid common mistakes when pitching or packaging?
Alex.
I'm trying to think. I don't know if I've even ever mastered the pitching. I guess if you just be passionate, you know, I don't know, you know, just have be prepared, have a lot of ideas, and just try to engage with the person that you're pitching to is kind of the way I've always approached it. I don't know if that's the right approach. If somebody has another, that's probably a whole other Zoom is, you know, pitching. But yeah, I just try to have positivity and passion.
Chris, most common challenges in first-time filmmaking makers trying to package their movie.
Sometimes I think there's not a strong producer on it. And you know, you just maybe like if you have a producer on it, you just need someone that you can like bounce these ideas off of, who believes in your project, who can like vouch for you, who can like try to find which doors are the right doors to open, all that stuff. Yeah, try to have like a really solid producer on it.
We have 2 minutes, so I'll encourage you all to keep this answer to like one sentence if you can. But if you could offer one radical piece of change to how projects are financed and or packaged and or greenlit, what would it be?
I just try. I don't know. I like risk takers, like people who think outside the box. So I just I hope we can find partners who think similarly. You know, maybe want to take a chance on something that maybe feels a little riskier. But like I said, we're trying to put, you know, the right pieces together. Like we have thought about this, even if it's not necessarily the people you'd expect that would greenlight something. Like there is a reason that we're choosing Jacob Elordi, you know, or choosing, you know, some of these people who are maybe haven't broken out yet, but it's just part of the game, you know, at that level, you know. It's just anyway, want to keep it short, so I'll stop.
No, that was great. I'll just throw in there that it would be amazing to have more government funded programs for emerging filmmakers.
That's great. Yeah.
So if anyone here has parents in government, tell them that. Anyone else? One big radical idea for doing things differently?
I think studios should have a lot of budget in their own slates for like, I think Cord Jefferson said that, who I went to school with, but it's like, you know, if every studio put aside $10 million for up and coming risk takers that they would give distribution to, and even if it's $1 million a film, you have 10 films.
Yeah.
You're just risking, and with no loss to them. $1 million is nothing to them. Like they eat lunch and it's $1 million, right? But if you have every studio doing that, that's maybe like what, 50 more films a year of like risk takers. And the chance, like it benefits them, right? Because if it breaks, they can just say, like, if it breaks, you have a first look deal here for the next 3 years. Like they can control things. They just have to care. Which they don't do right now, but that would be radical.
Anyone else would like to throw something in here?
That's the perfect answer. It's more studios incubating young filmmakers. That would be amazing. And the government funding.
When
I love
Alex
those.
opens up his studio, it's gonna be awesome.
Katie,
It cut out for a second. Is this the radical thing question?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, it cut out for me. No, I agree with Phil. I'm like, if everyone just put a little money aside, or if we had some government, like I'm pretty sure the UK, like the BFI, that's all funded by them. Like if we had something like that, that would be amazing.
Chris, anything you want to add?
I learned a lot today about packaging. Thank you for this.
I did too. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you to our 5 panelists. These are not retired professionals. These are people who are actively doing the thing, and 90 minutes of their time is really hard to get. So the fact that they all just took their evening out to share some knowledge with us all is incredible. Very much appreciated. And yeah, this is going to go live soon. So thank you all for showing up. Yeah, please keep the chat alive. And Dave, Alex, Phil, Katie, Chris, thank you for being so kind and graceful with your knowledge, and hope to see y'all in person soon.
Thank you.
Carlos,
Thank you
for setting
Thanks,
this up.
Carlos.
A huge thank you to Carlos and everyone on today's panel for another insightful conversation on the business of filmmaking. As I mentioned up top, this episode is part of Antigravity Academy satellite sessions. Those are free monthly conversations with high-level individuals in film and TV to make resources and information available to as many up-and-coming filmmakers as possible. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, be sure you are subscribed to Dolby Creator Talks. You can find links to our show on all the major podcasting platforms, including the video version on YouTube, in our show notes. Or you can simply search for Dolby wherever you get your podcasts. If you're curious to know more about what we do at Dolby Creator Lab, head on over to dolbycreatorlab.com. There you'll find information about all of our programs. You can subscribe to our mailing list and access the entire library of episodes of this podcast, including all the other satellite sessions with Carlos that we've already released. Once again, these are brought to you in partnership with Antigravity Academy and CAPE, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. If you'd like to learn more about those organizations, you can find information in our show notes, as always. Until next time, this is Dolby Creator Talks. I'm your host, Glenn Kaiser. Our producer and editor is Michael Coleman. Our executive producers are Amanda Schneider and Jack Ferry, with additional editing by Matt Nixon. And our production coordinator is Karen Marroquin. Thanks for joining us.